Happy June, everybody. And this is going to be the June 1st waivers report. So I am going to be doing a series. I'm calling it the First Contact Summer series that I'll be doing. And it's going to talk all about what is going on this summer, because the summer astrology is like super wild. This whole year has been wild. But the First Contact Summer thing came through to me pretty strongly. And so I'm going to be talking about lots of different events in that series that are going to take us through June, July, and August, right? But for this report, I'm just going to talk about the June astrology. I'll touch briefly on some of the things I'm going to be diving into. But yeah, there's a lot to kind of cover. So as I was really kind of getting the downloads about the summer, looking at the astrology, looking at the energy, it became very clear that the summer is a very potent time. You will hear me discuss Barbalt's basket, which a lot of you may have come across recently. And he was a French astrologer who made a lot of very accurate predictions, mainly looking at outer planet configurations. And so he predicted some really major world events, like a decade ahead of time, basically looking at the future kind of outer planet transits. And so the summer of 2026 was another prediction that he made before he passed. And basically said that the summer of 2026 would be this kind of quantum leap within humanity, and that this was a real kind of opportunity for humanity to kind of make a leap into the new paradigm, into the new age, right? And so I will be talking about that. Now, in terms of my own kind of vision and what I'm seeing with the first contact energy, and again, I'll talk more about that in this. I'll save that for the series. But June's portion, being the first month of the summer, is going to be the decloaking phase. So I will briefly mention that. And decloaking, right, can mean many, many things. There's a lot of theories on that, right? It's like, oh, are we going to see like UFO ships decloak in the skies? Are we going to see, ancient or what we would call extraterrestrial technology being exposed, right? Like, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about decloaking? Now, I'm going to, throughout the series and for this month's report, I'm going to be turning the theme always to the self, because part of the problem with the ego mind, part of the problem with where the consciousness is at now, is that everything is externalized. And in truth, nothing ever manifests externally that has not happened internally first. So we're kind of living in like ass backwards, upside down land, where everybody thinks things need to happen externally in order for the internal to change. And it's actually the opposite. So I'm going to be focusing on the internal changes that are going to be happening, because nothing external is going to occur unless this happens first, right? So we're going to bring the focus to the individual self. And decloaking to me on an individual level has always meant it is the decloaking of your true self. Okay? It is when you take the mask off, whether that be the ego mask, the persona, right? The conditioning, the programming that really isn't true to who we are, but it's just something that we've inherited, something that we've developed. That could be decloaking your true self that you're actively suppressing, right? Because you need to fit into society in a certain way. You need to fit in with your family, let's say. You need to fit in with your friend group. You need to fit in at your place of work. You need to fit in your community. Like, there's a lot of cloaking, right? That is always going on. And then on a more spiritual level, right? I think the decloaking is really getting in tune with we can either call it the higher self, or I've been saying the future self, because I think we're at that point where a lot of the higher self has been integrated, right? That's when you just get back in tune with the soul. And now we're really working on the future self. Basically, the future timelines that already exist are beginning to merge into the now. And so there's a future you that is kind of coming into this merge, and that's part of the decloaking, right? And also we might see in this theme of decloaking, again, I'll talk more extensively about all of these topics, but I think there's also going to be a theme around the decloaking where you do start to see people decloak, and you thought that they were one thing and they are another, right? And so what I mean by that is that a lot of people have developed what we call superego, right? The superego is a highly kind of intelligent programming, and it morphs, okay? So it basically seeks to escape transformation. And so it creates all types of diversions and distractions and blames and projections and excuses and manipulation, all types of things, basically to avoid needing to be transformed, right? And so the superego creates this kind of massive cloak where you think someone is a certain person, or you view them in a certain way, but they're actually very different than that. And they don't let those true colors out, right? Very often. Sometimes you do get glimpses of it and you're like, oh, that was super out of character, right? And usually there will be a blame, right? It'll be like, oh, well, I was just upset because XYZ happened, or this person did this, right? It's always external, but really it's there under the surface. So what I also think is going to happen is not only are we going to have a decloaking of the light, if you will, meaning a lot of our God selves are going to start showing more. Maybe for a long time, if you have felt like you didn't fit in, like you were ostracized, that you were judged, people didn't understand you, maybe people didn't appreciate you, whatever the case may be, right? For your true authentic self, that's suddenly going to shine through. We're going to really see like the light being decloaked. We're going to see the God selves. We're going to see the authentic selves emerge. And again, as a physical manifestation, I think this will lead to what we're thinking of as a decloaking of, some people say the UFOs, I just call them galactics, right? They're other dimensional beings. They might actually decloak at some point, right? Show themselves, if you will, because we have shown ourselves, right? Now, at the same time, there have been a lot of other theories about decloaking, again, that I will talk about, where there are theories, beliefs, right, that there are a lot of non-human entities existing on this planet, masking as humans, right? And that can be light or dark, right? That there are actually angels in disguise, right? Or there are actually, all of us are angels in disguise, really. But, you know, that there's a lot of kind of galactic presence here, but they're hiding as a human, if you will. But there are also demons in disguise, right? There can be galactic beings masking as humans that are not of the light, if you will. So I think that decloaking energy is really going to become apparent in June. So don't be surprised if you see a mix of all of those things. Okay, I think this is the month of authenticity. I think it's a month of revealing. And that can be shocking, but that can also be enlightening, right? And again, I don't know how this is going to play out. I just see the energy and I read the energy, and that's how I interpret it. So talking about June, right? So this is the decloak month. It's the start of first contact summer. So let's talk a little bit about the vibes of June. So for one, May was a very big transitional month. We had a lot of kind of tough aspects towards the end of the month. A lot of squares going on, a lot of tension. So if you found yourself having a hard time towards the end of May, there was a lot of tension in the air. We had a Venus-Saturn square. We had a Mars-Pluto square. the blue moon in Sagittarius, which again, Sagittarius is about truth. And it is about the experience of truth, right? And that full moon was opposing Uranus and Gemini. We have Jupiter at the critical degrees of Cancer, still squaring Chiron and Aries, which will continue to happen for the next couple of weeks. So there's a lot of powerful energy that we ended the month of May on. And again, it's kind of bleeding into June. So we do start out the month, right? We're still in the window a little bit of the blue moon in Sagittarius. And so however that transpires, but I do think it's a moment, like I said, when we're still kind of in a loose Mars-Pluto square, that's going to ease after the full moon. Venus and Saturn are in a square. Jupiter and Chiron are in a square. Like, the energy is testy. It's testy, but in a way where, remember that Sagittarius is about speaking the truth, living the truth, experiencing the truth. And Sagittarius also is very optimistic. And so they have this way of keeping that optimism no matter what. They're dreaming big. They're going for the highest horizon. And so all that tension that was building the last week of May leading up to this full moon, I think was really just pushing us to be like, you know what? Whatever is in my way of my big vision, right? And whatever you think your big vision is, Jupiter and Sag are like, go bigger. Right? Like, it's very limitless energy. So it's like, expand your imagination, right? Go bigger, go home, like really expand past what you think your greatest dream is, what your greatest vision is. That's what that moon was really encapsulating, right? But with all the tension in the air, I think what a lot of the tension was highlighting was, where are there things in my life that are limiting me, that are getting in the way of me entering this big vision, of me really living my greatest dream, of me really leaping into the horizon. And so a lot of that tension, you know, it creates conflicts. It can create relationship issues, power struggles. It can also, though, especially with the full moon energy, it empowers us to speak the truth, to say what we need to say, to stop holding back, right? Remember, Sagittarius is the archer, the arrow, right? You can pull that arrow as far back as you like, but eventually you've got to release it. And I think that's very much like what the end of May was giving, right? It was like, we just need to get it off our chest, say what we need to say, stop taking the bullshit. We also need to be very open to learning, relearning, unlearning, right? We need to be open to new perspectives, because that limitless vision, that big dream, is also not only going to require us to get rid of certain people, places, and things in our life that they're just somehow interfering with the vision, right? And it's not a personal thing. It's interfering, right? Or it's not aligned with the big dream or the big vision. But a lot of times it's also our own personal perspectives, our own beliefs. And sometimes our greatest block to the big vision is our limited thinking and our limited belief systems. And so that also needs to come out with that blue moon, right? It's like, you know what? And the one thing I've been picking up a lot is the energy of complaining. So for me personally, I was just getting so viscerally agitated by being in the presence of complaining, right? And we all do it, right? It's a programming, it's a conditioning, and sometimes we do just need to vent it out. But that energy, that frequency was starting to viscerally agitate me. And so for me, I was like, you know, that is one frequency that I think is really blocking myself and a lot of other people. If we just stop complaining and we either shift into gratitude, or if there's something we don't like, do something about it, say something about it, fix it, right? But complaining is a loop. It's a taking of energy that goes nowhere. So again, you might find that a lot of these things were illuminated under that moon. Now, as we enter June 1st, we are going to have Mercury shift the first day from Gemini to Cancer. So Mercury's been in Gemini the last couple of weeks. It's met up with Uranus, it met up with the sun, and this was fun, but also chaotic because Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. We have Uranus in Gemini. We've had the sun in Gemini. We did previously have Venus in Gemini. So if you have been feeling erratic, okay, just thoughts a million miles a minute, lots of ideas, but you can't quite figure out how to execute any of them, or just everything was overstimulating and overwhelming, I do think that was because we had a ton of Gemini energy, which we will still have more this month, but especially with Mercury, it was like there was just way too many things out in the ether, like way too many words, way too many thoughts. And so we could have felt a little bit erratic. Now, Mercury going into Cancer is a different tone, right? And we also will have Venus in Cancer for the first 2 weeks of the month. So, and again, Venus has been squaring Saturn, but that's going to ease up through the first week of June here. And so there's suddenly a call to move out of the mind, right? And just into the heart. Cancer is the heart. It's about focusing on empathy, compassion. Now, Cancer can be fierce, so don't underestimate that notion, right? Like think of like a mama bear. That's very Cancer, okay? She's nurturing, she's loving, she's warm, she's welcoming, right? But as soon as you cross a line, you cross a threshold, you threaten anything that she loves, she is going to maul you. And that's very much Cancer. And so what we might find the first like 2 weeks of the month here is we are a little bit more sensitive. I think we're going to have to really slow ourselves down and really have more compassionate conversations. This is also a really good time, again, as the decloaking energy that I'm talking about is practice with Venus and Mercury there. We have to practice being vulnerable with others, really sharing what we feel, right? And I think the wound of Cancer is not belonging, right? So think about Cancer being relative to the home, the family. It's very associated with the mother. It's very associated with that sense of nurturing, of love, of being welcomed, right? Like, you know, Cancer is the one who welcomes you into their home, cooks you a hot meal, tells you to stay as long as you like, you know, makes you up a bed, right? Checks in on how you're feeling. Like that is Cancer. And so I think the wound of Cancer, and, you know, we did have Pluto in Capricorn for 16 years opposing the sign of Cancer. Somewhere along the line, we lost our sense of nurturing and we entered this really strange period, where it was just all about the grind. It was all about work and productivity and getting things done. And it doesn't matter how you get it done, but get it done, right? Doesn't matter if you never see your family. Doesn't matter if you never see your kids. Doesn't matter if you have to skip special moments in your life. You better be at work and you better get this done, right? That was the energy of Pluto and Capricorn. And so we're relearning, right? How to share how we feel, how to open up to others, how to emotionally connect, how to really express authentically what we're feeling, and also to be open to listening to others, right? To hold space for them, right? We need to reignite the welcoming energy and the love that we have as a humanity, so that people feel safe, so that people feel like they belong, right? We've had a lot of outcast energy over the last like 2 decades where we've putting everyone in labels and certain people are in this group and that group. And there's just been this very isolative kind of rejection energy. I think the pandemic also contributed to that. And we're re-entering this new, it's not even a new period, but we're remembering how to be in the heart, how to connect with others, how to remember that we as a humanity are a family. And so that energy is going to be very strong the first 2 weeks of June. Like I said, some people might be very emotionally sensitive. People might be taking things personally. And that's okay. right? We need to hold space for that as well. So I think holding space is really important. And I think what, a lot of the transits are teaching us is holding space or having empathy or having compassion does not mean that you violate your own boundaries, right? Saturn and Aries. It does not mean you self-abandon, right? Neptune and Aries. You have to have a core sense of self. You have to be able to assert boundaries, right? That blue moon in Sag was very much like, sometimes you've got to just say the truth. You got to speak the thing, even if someone doesn't like it. And you know what? That is real unconditional love. When we're enabling people, when we're lying to them because we're thinking it makes them feel better, that's not love. That's not coming from the heart, right? We're trying to actually protect our own mask. And again, there's going to be a lot of learning with this curve the first 2 weeks of June. And that leads us to the 6-6 portal, one of my favorite portals of the year, actually. The number 6 is very associated with family, with that cohesion, that synergy, that idea of belonging, that feeling of safety, community. It's a very feminine number, right? It's also the number of matter, mother, matter. It's the same frequency. So it's actually part of the year when we go through the 6-6 portal where, again, it is about remembering what is really important, right? Because as soon we're going to get to Cancer season, and that is one of the themes of Cancer. But we're remembering that what is most important is our relationships with other human beings, right? It's the relationship with ourselves and the relationship with others, community, giving and receiving, synergy, right? The joy and happiness that comes from having emotional connection. But it's also the number of matter. And so I think June, again, is going to be where a lot of the energy that's been going on etherically or ethereally, you could say, is going to start materializing. And this is why I recommended for everybody, especially on that new moon that we had in Taurus in May, to quite literally bury your intentions, right? Or be outside and really connect with the land, the ground, speak your intentions out loud, write a ceremony, do something physical, because a lot of what we've been working on the last 3 months, which since February, the big activation month, is starting to come into fruition. And this goes much further back. This is years in the making. This is decades in the making, right? But things are going to start to materialize into matter, okay? Energy is going to start to materialize because we are reaching that point in the ascension where we say the veil gets thinner, right? What does that mean? It means the veil, the blind spot between energy and matter, is dissolving. What do I mean by that? When you're in the ego mind, when you're in a very limited consciousness, you are relying on your 5 senses to understand things, right? And then you're also going off the mind, which can only interpret based off the past, and it can only analyze things in a logical way. It doesn't have an ability to perceive things from an intuitive state or an energetic state, right? So with that, our perception of reality is limited to less than 5%, right? We're 95% legally blind in terms of the cosmos, right? We're only perceiving this much of what is actually in reality. And that is very limiting, okay? So when we say the veil is dissolving, it means that the rest of that 95% of energy that we're unable to perceive starts to materialize into matter. That is the veil dropping. This is where people will start to understand that not everything is just based on what you can see, touch, taste, and smell. There is much more beyond that. But as we're advancing and evolutionizing as human beings, but also on so many other levels, our perceptions, meaning we're gaining those extra sensory gifts. Biologically, it's happening whether people believe in it or not. It's occurring. The DNA is mutating. So we're starting to gain those extra sensory perceptions to where we're going to start seeing more things come into the matter state, to the physical manifestation that we couldn't see before. That is decloaking. Okay? Everyone thinks disclosure is information. It's not information. It can be, right? Because through experience, through what we're perceiving, we are gaining new information, right? But as it stands now, again, they could come out and tell us everything they've ever hidden from humanity, right? Cool. At this point, do I think it would change anything? Maybe. I don't know, could. But I'm bored of it now. I feel like everyone has to experience it, and that's going to be the only way, right? And so I don't think that disclosure is information. I think the disclosure is decloaking. I think disclosure is things that we could not perceive before now becoming perceivable. Things we could not see before, we now see, right? Things we couldn't hear before, now we can hear them. That is the real disclosure. To me, that is what it means. The veil dropping. It means that we can suddenly perceive a much greater amount of reality than we could before, because everything we're talking about already exists. Okay? The new earth already exists in some state, right? It's not, in many ways, this is a co-creation that's happening. Nothing is ever set in stone in creation. So in many ways, we are still co-creating this as we go, right? We're co-creating the timeline, all that jazz. We're going through an alchemical process in our bodies as we're changing frequency levels. Like it is happening. But it all exists. And so it's just our level of perception, right? So I think that 6/6 portal is going to really kind of start that decloaking process, okay? So this is why I'm saying really be cognizant and conscious about holding space the first 2 weeks of June for yourself and others, okay? We have to be in the heart with this, because we're going to see what we didn't see before, and some things we might really like and some things we don't really like. Okay, but this is part of the process. Now, this brings me to the second week of June, where things get a little, very interesting. Okay, so Jupiter is going to be at the critical degrees of Cancer throughout this entire month of June. Now, I did do a little update the other day, and I was basically talking about how since Jupiter's been in Cancer since last June, Cancer rules the moon. Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. She is a big girl. Anywhere that she is transiting becomes extremely magnified, extremely blown up, if you will. So I do feel that we were a lot more sensitive to moon cycles during Jupiter and Cancer. We were learning that the ebbs and the flows change every 2.5 days. That's why it might have felt like we're on a fucking roller coaster since last year, emotionally, energy levels, vitality, right? Because I do think we were hyper affected by the moon cycles with Jupiter and Cancer. And now that Jupiter's at the critical degrees, I think that magnification is going to continue. And then Jupiter will move into Leo at the end of the month, which I'll get to. And I do think that's going to expand our solar cycles, meaning the 30-day solar cycles are going to become much more kind of apparent, and we're really going to feel them. This could also mean maybe increased solar activity. I'm not sure. But the second week of June, okay, Jupiter is going to be at the critical degrees of Cancer along with Venus. Now, this is pretty auspicious, actually, because Venus in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, Venus and Jupiter are the benefics. Okay, so in Hellenistic astrology, those were always the benefics, right? And they were always associated with blessings, positivity, growth, right? That's why they call them that. Think of like it's a benefit, right? Whereas the malefics were kind of the shit stirrers and created doom and gloom and chaos, which again, a lot of this we have to evolve past. However, to have the two benefics meeting up, right? And they're going to meet up exactly in the window between the 10th and the 12th of June. Okay. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. We can discuss exaltations at another time, because I think there is some misunderstanding with that as well. But nonetheless, I'm going to go with the positivity of this. And there's a huge exaltation here with Cancer energy. It's a blessed time, okay? And again, I think this is getting us really in tune with our hearts. This is who you truly are. None of this outside is who you are. And when you can really love yourself, when you can love the core of who you are, you can love others. And so I think that that's going to be a very auspicious window of time there, where there could just be a lot of blessings. Cancer rules money as well. Community gatherings, get-togethers, things like that, maybe new emotional connections that are just really beautiful and inspiring. But I also think it's just going to be a moment where I feel the heart energy is going to really come online, right? And this, again, is going to be part of it, right? The heart is electromagnetic. And so that's going to power up. And this is where a lot of that veil drops, right? You start to see what's really on the inside within each person. And this is part of the process, right? But it's a very beneficial day. It's a day of blessing. So I would definitely schedule anything between the 10th and the 12th that is maybe a gathering or getting together with friends or family, or maybe a ceremony, anything like that. It's just like a very, very interesting few days there. And also on June 12th, we are going to have Uranus square the nodes exactly. Okay, so Uranus is going to be at 2 degrees, and then the nodes are going to be at 2 degrees, Pisces and Virgo, both in a square to Uranus in Gemini. So it's what we call a T-square. There was a author that wrote a really good piece about this called Jessica Davidson. And she basically was talking about this date, right? The 12th. That is auspicious. Jupiter and Venus will be conjunct right before Venus moves into Leo. And Uranus will be squaring the nodes at 2 degrees. 2 degrees is a Taurus degree. It is the luxury degree. It is a blessings degree, okay? So she talked about this, and she basically says that this represents a crossroads energy, which is very true, right? Uranus is sitting in the middle of the crossroads in Gemini, right? These are all mutable signs. So this is a mutable T-square, which can be chaotic because it feels like there's so much happening, so much swirling around, and we're not really sure which way to go. Okay, that is mutable energy. And you have the North Node in Pisces, which has been guiding us for over a year and a half now, to let go. It's about forgiveness. It's about letting go. It's about surrender. It's about trusting the process. It's about trusting in the universe. It's about letting go of trying to control everything and analyze everything and micromanage everything, right? And while the South Node in Virgo has been really pushing us to let go of that control, to let go of that over logic, the need to plan everything, the need to figure everything out. The same time, the South Node in Virgo has been putting us through quite an extensive detox physically and in our lives to get rid of everything that doesn't align with our destiny, right? And the destiny here with the North Node in Pisces is very fated, right? Pisces is uncontrollable. It is when the universe is in charge. It is when the cosmos have their hand. And that is where our destiny node is. And so I think we've had to let go of so many things and purge so many things to align with that destiny. And so now we're going to, on that day where Venus and Jupiter, the benefics, meet up at the critical degrees of Cancer, it's like, oh my God, what a blessing, right? It's going to be this huge heart activation at the same time. We meet that day on a crossroads, right? So we're going to be like, which way do I go, right? And I think that's going to be interesting because, so she basically says, you have to choose whether to go forwards or backwards. Okay, conflicts can arise between the past and future, what is known and familiar versus what is new and invites growth and evolution. You will need to increase your awareness in order to choose, and that choice might not be obvious. She said there could be sudden endings, beginnings, or changes in the direction of your life. There could be new ideas and breakthroughs that reveal surprising potentials that you could develop. You could also flip-flop between options if you're not sure of your direction, right? So that's interesting because Uranus and Gemini is asking us to re-question what we think we know, to be open to new information, to be open to plot twists and sudden interesting avenues that we weren't expecting, right? Uranus and Gemini needs us to be versatile and flexible. And so that second weekend of June is just, it's such a massive weekend because there is a crossroads energy and there is a very fated element to it. And so again, I think as the first 2 weeks of June have this focus of really being in the heart, expressing your vulnerabilities, connecting with other people on a real, authentic, emotional level, right? Also holding space for others who might be having to go through the process of things within them being revealed that they didn't know were there, right? Or having to deal with that internal energy that they've been hiding, masking, suppressing, and that might all spill out. And then we get to that second weekend and it's this huge heart opening. It's this huge message of like love unconditionally, right? And then there's this fated moment of Uranus squaring the nodes where I think destiny is just going to take its course. And I especially think that those who are operating in the heart, those who are choosing to kind of decloak, right? Get out of the mind and into the heart, will have tons of blessings and like positive directions all of a sudden unfolding, things you just didn't expect, right? And again, for others who might need more lessons, they can also get that. So that's the first 2 weeks of June. It's hectic, right? Now, Venus is going to enter Leo on June 13th. I think that this will be great. This is going to give us a sudden, even more burst, right? Because Cancer is really about the internal world. It's about the deep emotions, the feelings, the sense of who you are alone, right? When you're just with yourself. And Leo is the outer expression of that self. It's where we express ourselves through any form, right? Verbal, performing, creating, socializing. Like Leo is what takes the internal, the Cancer, the moon, and shines it out. Leo's ruled by the sun. So then all of a sudden, I think we have this moment and then we suddenly burst through, right? The light is going to become extremely a big dominant theme here in June. Again, this ties into the decloaking because when there's more light, there's less darkness, right? That's just common sense. And darkness here, I'm not necessarily referring to nefarious darkness, although that could be part of it, but I'm talking about things hidden, suppressed, veiled, things we couldn't perceive before. That is what darkness is, right? There is a lot of light this month. So the light quotient is heavily tipping, and that's why I think it's the month of decloak. Venus and Leo is going to start that off. All of a sudden, we're able to kind of express that authentic self on a much more bold level. Everyone's going to feel that rush of optimism, just this kind of like, oh, I'm free to be who I am, right? And the following day on June 14th, we have a new moon in Gemini. And this is going to be at 24 degrees Gemini. So Uranus is not going to be conjunct this new moon here, but Uranus nonetheless will be at the early degrees there of Gemini. And if this is going to be in Gene Key 12, for those of you who joined me in my seminar last month, we actually activated Gene Key 12 last month. That was one of the reasons for that activation. And what is Gene Key 12 called? Oh, sorry, you can't see it. A pure heart. That is what 12 is about. And this, I talked all about this last month, but in the gene keys, all of the keys tend to fall into a certain codon ring. This happens to fall into what's called the Ring of Trials. Okay, so there's 3 major trials that humanity has to go through on the ascension process. 12 is the final trial. Okay. And it also then falls into its own codon ring known as the Ring of Secrets. So again, you catch my drift, you get the theme, secrets being revealed, the veil dropping, more light, less darkness, decloaking, revealing, perceiving. Okay, that's the vibe here. And basically he says that vanity is the final shadow to be released from humanity as the final trial, and that it'll cling to us even at a high vibration. And he describes vanity as vanity is afraid that if you come from your heart, you will lose your power. I think we can sum it up with that. And he says, vanity can hide in silence. Sometimes vanity is hidden in what you do not say. It hides itself away in your thoughts and feelings. Wherever there is self-identification, there is vanity. The reason that vanity is such a great trial for humanity is because it lies outside the scope of your ego. He says exactly what we've always been saying. And he said the shadow is so elusive. That's the superego. I'm telling you, it's the superego. It could even be the spiritual ego too, as he talks about, like vanity can kind of come with you even to the top of the spiritual scale, if you will. And he's not talking about vanity in the same way we're talking about it, right? Like that is part of it. Like we care about how we look and, you know, whatever. We want to look a certain way. Yes, that's vain, right? That's vanity. But he's talking about this on a deeper fucking level, right? And he is saying exactly what we have always been saying, which is what lives inside the ego will eventually be revealed. Okay, you can only mask for so long. And he basically says it lies outside of the scope of your ego. And that is what I'm talking about. The superego is so advanced, so elusive that sometimes we cannot even see it within ourselves, right? So this is why the dropping of the veil helps us see that. So it's not a bad thing. But again, for those who have like done zero, right, inner work, it can be highly detrimental, I guess, or just very challenging to deal with, because suddenly everything you've been hiding within becomes very apparent without. And for the first time, you have to kind of address it and deal with it, right? And he said, vanity keeps you from truly loving another because it keeps you isolated. And this is, again, my point with all the Cancer energy this month, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, right? It's a fear that if we come from the heart, if we love others unconditionally, that somehow we will lose our power. Somehow we have to keep that ego alive, right? Because otherwise it's bad for us. And this is the reckoning moment. This is the reckoning moment. And that new moon in Gemini, it's just back to back here. Okay, so that new moon in Gemini is going to kick us off, right, of that second week. So that's June 14th. Now, the rest of that week, okay, remember, Jupiter is still going to be at the critical degrees of Cancer. Basically, the entire first 3-ish weeks of June, Jupiter's at the critical degrees of Cancer, in a square to Chiron in Aries at the critical degrees. This has been an 8-year transit with Chiron in Aries, okay? Those two squaring, it's not easy because, again, Jupiter in Cancer, I talked about this in my update, we are birthing something. Cancer is the womb, the nurturing, the belonging, right? It's warmth. We are birthing something new. Again, we're birthing our true selves. We are birthing back into the heart, if you will. We are birthing the new earth, whatever you want to look at it as. It's all kind of the same shtick. And it's all up in a tight ass square with Chiron at the critical degrees of Aries, who has been demanding from us the last 8 years to heal our fucking wounds around our self-identity, around who we are, around feeling helpless, powerless, like a victim, and having to reclaim our power back and say, you know what? No, I do hold the power. I am empowered. I am God with God. It was about self-love. It was about self-assertiveness. It was about really claiming our right to exist, right? And having that confidence and having that embodiment. That's been a long Chiron and Aries journey. Now, between the new moon in Gemini on the 14th and June 19th, when Chiron's going to move into Taurus, and that's going to be a brief 4-month window before he retrogrades back into Aries, but nonetheless, we're going to feel it. Jupiter and Chiron are just be squaring that whole week. And the question, I think, is going to be like, do you know who you are? And are you willing to own who you are? Is there also a fear around, again, this theme with 12 seems to be coming up. Is there a fear around really coming from the heart? Do we feel like we have to always be on the defense? Do we feel like we have to live in the ego and compete with others and fight with others and have conflict with others? Or can we actually move into unconditional love? Can we actually end this cycle of almost like violence against love, right? And he even says that, Richard Rudd in Gene Key 12, he said the arch enemy of vanity is love. And so that's going to be kind of a challenging week, I think. And then Chiron enters Taurus on the 19th, immediately comes up into a square with Pluto in Aquarius retrograde. And I think that is, I did a whole separate video on Chiron and Taurus on my personal channel if you want to watch that. But there's going to suddenly be a huge clash and tension surrounding things like resources, money, the autonomy of our bodies and our time and our work and our labor, the autonomy of the earth as an alive sentient being, right? And a square to Pluto and Aquarius, which can be the shadows of technology. I think the whole data center thing is going to really combustible around that time. We're going to see I think a lot of protests and kind of upheavals, also with, all of these questions that we've been trying to answer, like, is AI good for us? What are these data centers doing? Why are we ruining our environment for further technology that we don't need? Why are we trying to become robots, right? Why are we replacing the human energy with robots, right? Like, there's going to be all these questions. There's also going to be the question of, where is the money? Where is it? Where are the resources? And there's going to be a huge push to have that equality of wealth, that kind of transfer of wealth, if you will, the abundance for all. Like, how are we going to take care of humanity? That's going to kick that off really hard. So, and again, we're going to see, I think the first tension we're going to see is this question between the natural source energy, which exists in nature and exists in us, and then a tension with the shadows, which Pluto is bringing up in Aquarius, which is technology. There's going to be this thing of, we are natural organic source beings. We are more powerful than technology. And again, with the whole decloaking thing, there's going to become that question of who is connected to source and who is not, right? Who is running on synthetic programming, right? Who is devoid of life force energy, which again, when you're disconnected from the heart and you're living completely in the mind, you are essentially a robot. You are programmable, no matter which way you cut it. And so there's going to be this also sudden weirdness happening. And again, I don't know how this plays out in real life. Like, do we suddenly see aliens walking around the planet? I don't know. And I don't care, really. However this goes, we're along for the ride, so it doesn't matter. But there's going to be that interesting question of who is an organic being and who is not. I think that's an uncomfortable question that might come up. And again, we're obviously definitely going to see the question of, where's the fucking money? And where is it going? And there's going to be a huge push for that equality of wealth, right? Now, this leads us right into the window of the summer solstice for us here in the Northern Hemisphere, where the light quotient reaches its peak, where the most light is coming into the planet, okay? Powerful. That solstice is going to be quite It's going to be quite a day. So I am kind of excited about that. Now, then we have a week where it's somewhat calm, but I think again, this is going to be a Pandora's box here. So we have that solstice, and then we get to the very end of June, the last couple days of June. On the 28th, Mars will enter Gemini and out of Taurus. Thank God for Mars and Taurus through June, because Lord knows we're going to need just a little bit of grounded energy here, because this might be a lot. But again, it's all the way we look at it. For one, it's our perception. That's why the placebo effect is 99% effective. It is what you believe. Okay. And it's also, so it's however you're looking at this energy and this astrology, it's going to come down to what you believe. But at the same time, I like to be very objective as well with like reading the astrology, where it is what it is too, right? And you can't control how it manifests. We should choose the most positive perspective. We should choose wild optimism. We should choose faith and trust. 100%. Shoot for the stars and believe in it, okay? 10 toes down. But we can also learn and teach ourselves how to work with the energy, right? The more you work in synergy with the cosmos, the more beneficial. When you're trying to fight against them, that's when it's not going to work, right? So thank God for Mars and Taurus. He is going to ground us. You might feel like this month you thought you were going to get a lot more things rolling and moving. Like I've kind of thought this to myself as well. Like, oh, I can't wait to like get moving again. I felt so lethargic the past 2 weeks. But I'm also preparing that what is happening a lot in June is an internal process. But that's okay. Like Mars and Taurus is going to tell us, remember, don't rush the process. Just enjoy the moment. Enjoy each moment as it comes, right? And don't take any of it too seriously. And then Mars will enter Gemini on June 28th and will conjunct Uranus. And that is where shit pops off. That is when the energy goes from, okay, things are happening. There's a lot of heart activations. There can be a lot of great community, love, family, just an experience of oneness this month. Again, that decloak energy. We also might feel a sense of authentic self coming through that just feels greatly fulfilling to us, right? I think that should really be the focus of the month. But Mars entering Gemini, and for my fellow Mars and Geminis, that's when shit pops off. That's when we get busy. That's when we start doing 5 million things at one time. June 28th. All right. The very following day, we have a full moon in Capricorn at 8 degrees. Oof. That's actually where my moon is. So I don't know why I'm scared, but that's a Scorpio degree. So if you do have like any cardinal energy in your chart at 8 degrees, or if you did have your moon also at 8 degrees, it is a Scorpio degree. So there's a spice to it. There's a sting to it, but the 8 is power. So this full moon at a Scorpio degree in Capricorn, okay, this is a moment. Remember, Cancer and Capricorn are opposite signs. Cancer is about the love, the heart, what truly matters. And at the end of the day, what truly matters is emotional connection and emotional fulfillment. It's love. At the end of the day, what matters, and all that matters, is love, okay? But with Capricorn, we do get a little bit of that sense of, we also, as human beings, want to also experience external fulfillment and achievement, right? We want to accomplish something. We want to build something. We want to create something. We want to dedicate our efforts, right? And our time and our energy into something we truly love. That's why Cancer and Capricorn are sister signs. If you don't love what you build, if you don't love what you're doing, if you are not pouring the heart into everything that you are trying to achieve, right? It's not going to matter. It's not going to fulfill you. But if you have poured your heart and soul into what you want to achieve, I think this full moon in Capricorn is a moment. It's a moment of achievement. It's a moment of reaching the top of the mountain. And so in many ways, there might be some really good news as like depending on where this is in your chart, but this could be, oh, I finally got this role I've always wanted, or my dream is coming true, or I finally feel like I accomplished something really significant. It's kind of a moment of like achievement and feeling like, oh man, I done did it, right? And it's opening up this whole space for our dreams to really feel like they are tangible here. Now, Mercury is going to go retrograde on that same day. So, by the way, the full moon is in Gene Key 58, which is called, this is my Gene Key, is called From Stress to Bliss. Okay. And he basically says the shadow of dissatisfaction is lacking joy or having a deep restlessness or unease. It's basically the feeling that you are dissatisfied with life. Now, the very interesting part about this shadow, any of you with 58 as well, is that he says there is no way to suppress this shadow. We will always feel dissatisfied on some level, but that this is what actually drives us to want to improve, to make changes, to do better. So the shadow is actually one of those that serves us in a way. But he says that this shadow, you realize that your future dream you're trying to capture does not exist in the outer world. And so you are driven back into yourself. And that is where you find the bliss within. And again, but with that being said, the nature of Capricorn and its 8 degrees, which is a Scorpio degree and it's a power degree, it's a money degree, that there can be that when you find that within yourself, and that full moon's going to call for us to really find that sense of achievement and fulfillment within, it can manifest without. Now, Mercury is going to go retrograde on that exact day in Cancer, the opposing sign of Capricorn. So on that day, that's the 29th, we will have Jupiter sitting at the 29th degree of Cancer, and we will have Mercury going retrograde at the 26th degree of Cancer. So right before Jupiter set to move into Leo, Mercury and Jupiter meet up. Mercury gets some kind of codes from Jupiter, turns retrograde, and starts heading back. And then we will have a Mercury retrograde in Cancer for July, which is a little tricky, but here's a few excerpts from my favorite book, 360 Degrees of Your Star Destiny, on the 26th degree of Cancer. And it says, we can ride this wave to prosperity and currency, for we strike a characteristic pose, and this is what is rewarded in material times. The weakness is embodying in genuine terms, because it's all a pipe dream. It is viewed as not all there. Such projects and enterprises can easily go astray. They don't have true cohesion and steady intent. All of this goes with the territory. This frequency is not about getting somewhere. It's about the journey, the process, the internal soul dynamics that are involved in precipitating dreams into actions. Every bit of it is a theater performance for the benefit of the self and the world. In the karmic theater, this production fulfills collective and ancestral backlogs so easily that it tends to stop there. If we ever do access our fresh dreams and flesh them out, the sustaining qualities will be enduring. So a lot of what it's talking about is saying, again, that it's about the process, it's about the journey, and Mercury's going to take us back through all the degrees of Cancer during the retrograde. Did we miss something, right? And again, it's talking here about, like, this is all a performance. We are all acting this out on some grand level. But basically, that we have to infuse the true dreams, right? We have to infuse the true heart energy into all of this, or it's not going to sustain. It's not going to work. So again, we might have this moment of fulfillment and achievement, and then we're going to be drawn back through the Mercury retrograde of like, what does this really mean to me? Is my heart in it, right? How am I infusing my love, my vision, my intuitive gifts into this? And this is going to be a big question that comes with July, but also remember, Cancer is ancestry. Cancer is the ancestral line. And that Mercury retrograde throughout all of July will bleed into phase 2 of first contact summer of July, which is first contact. And that is first contact being made with your future self and or with the future timeline. So even though we view retrograde as backwards, I'm thinking that's actually forward. What if we are connecting with our future genetic line, our future biology, our future DNA? I'll save that question for July. But that is a jam-packed day on the 29th, and then June 30th, Jupiter enters Leo. This is a much better, personally, in my opinion, much better transit than Jupiter in Cancer. I have a rough time with Cancer energy. I have my Chiron there, but anywho, I also have Jupiter in Leo, so there's that, super biased. But hey, the good thing here, Jupiter in Cancer made us really moody. It brought us really deep into the core of ourself, a lot of ancestral issues, a lot of family dynamics, a lot of home stuff, a lot of money stuff. Like, it was a real deep dive. Jupiter in Leo, no matter which way you cut it, even though she will eventually meet up with the South Node in Leo, we'll put that aside for now, it's extravagant, it's flamboyant, it's joyful, it's creative. Jupiter in Leo is like, hey, you know what? Go big or go home. Put on the show, because we would rather put on a show. And I don't mean that in the sense of that masking ego thing. I mean, be yourself to the fullest extent, right? Like, really express yourself, be who you are, shine it bright. You know, it's like we would rather be over the top than be boring. Okay. And that's Jupiter in Leo. And I do think that's going to really expand our solar cycles, which I will then talk about for August, when the South Node will be in Leo, which that will be the 3rd chapter of First Contact Summer, which I will talk about the solar flash energy. So that's June for you guys. This month, I'll obviously be doing seminars that are geared towards these topics here. So we will be doing our New Earth Activation Seminar on the 6/6 portal. Again, bringing it into matter state. It's very feminine. It's very synergistic that day. And that day we are going to be activating Stargate 3. And that will be a great one, because that is the activation of the 3, the Trinity energy, the trinary system, which is what the new paradigm is based on, moving out of binary and into trinary. And so that's going to be a massive activation that day with Stargate 3. So for those of you who want to join, we're going to do that on the 6/6 portal. I'll be doing my Cosmic Human Seminar this month on the solstice. June 20th and 21st, we're going to harness that solstice energy, and we're actually going to be activating the Ring of Light. Again, that light quotient thing, we're going to be talking all about that. We're going to talk about the decloak energy, and so we're going to be activating all the keys in the Ring of Light for the solstice, so if you want to join that. And then I'll be doing my July astrology gathering on the 28th of June, right before that full moon kicks in. But we'll have Mars in Gemini, and there's going to be a lot to talk about, and it'll be super, super interesting and fun. And yeah, love you guys. Also, last minute, if anyone wants to join the June astrology gathering, which I'm going to go more in depth into all of this, that is going to be Sunday the 31st under that blue moon in Sag. So if you do want to sign up last minute for that, I will see you there. Love you guys. Happy June and happy First Contact Summer.